Hey guys, Zoolord here, back again with another top 10 video, and today we'll be counting down my top 10 favorite Marvel Legends figures of 2021. Finally! I am doing my top 10 Legends video. I decided to do this after my top 10 favorite action figures of 2021, mostly because there weren't any Legends that made that list. There were a few honorable mentions, and you can go back and watch that video at your own leisure, but at the end of the day, Legends brought it, but everyone else brought it just a little bit more. That said though, Legends did have a really nice assortment of really solid figures this past year, and we are going to talk about my top 10 favorites today. Now, before I get into it, and feel free to skip ahead of this if you so choose, because this is the 5th top 10 video I've done for the year 2021, so if you don't know the ground rules by now, you've either not watched the other videos or you've skipped past the ground rules, which there's nothing wrong with that. But rule number 1, pretty obvious, had come out in 2021, so I'm not going to be including the Stiltman wave. Plenty of people had that in 2020, so I'm not going to be including that one. That, to be quite honest, Frogman had no chance in hell at making this list. I don't understand the Frogman hype. Yes, it's nice that we get a nice rendition of an obscure character, but that is a character I have absolutely zero attachment to. I would say, if we're going to go obscure here, I have more attachment to Sleepwalker more than anything, which, yes, I am very much looking forward to that figure. So rule number 1 had to come out in 2021, and just to add on to that, has to not be Frogman. Rule number 2, I have to have it. If I don't have it, I don't know how good it is. I know some people got certain things earlier than yours truly, so they've had them longer and this and that. That said, I live in upstate New York, so we get stuff kind of dead last. So with that in mind, I don't have things like the Spider-Man Retro Wave yet, or certain figures that came out at the tail end of the year last year. I don't have those, so if I don't have it, it's automatically ineligible for this list, which leads me to my next rule. I had to already reviewed it, which everything you see here and everything on my list has already been reviewed, so pretty self-explanatory there. Rule number 4, I have to like it. Going back to the Frogman hype thing, I don't give a rat's ass about Frogman. I don't care if anyone else does. To each their own. I completely get it. If you enjoy that figure, that's cool. But I just thought it was a filler, to be quite honest with you. It's a really nice filler, but it's a character I wouldn't mind having or not having, regardless of its existence. So, I have to like it. If I don't like the figure, it ain't gonna be on the list. That's plain and simple. I don't care if it's the best thing since sliced bread. If I don't like it, then it ain't gonna be on the list. And going back to the I have to have it thing, yeah, that Hasbro HasLab Sentinel, whatever you want to call it, it looks nice, but for the price point, it should have had better knees and better paint. I don't think it was worth the $350. I can find plenty of other things worth the money that I would rather buy, and I did. So if you like the Sentinel, that's cool, but I just thought it wasn't worth the money, so I didn't buy it. Galactus, on the other hand, that one was a little bit more worth my time. I just didn't have the, $400 to drop on it. But either way, none of that stuff's going to be on here, which leads me to my last and final rule. I am limiting this list to one exclusive, one Build-A-Figure, and one deluxe figure, because there were plenty of good Build-A-Figures, deluxe figures, and exclusives that came out in the year 2021. I figured it would be only fair that we pick one of each. That way, the figures that make up the bulk of the Marvel Legends line, figures that come in the waves with the Build-A-Figure parts, get to shine, because sometimes they just get overshadowed by Build-A-Figures and deluxe figures and HasLabs now. I mean, I've seen plenty of people put the Sentinel as their number 1, which to each their own, but I don't think that's really fair. If it's 350 bucks, it better be better than the rest of the figures on the list, if you know what I'm saying. But that said, Ursa Major here, as much as I love him, he's not going to make the list. The fan channel exclusive Sandman, Hercules, and Tigra. For starters, I don't have those, but they're all really nice exclusives. And the Walgreens exclusive Obsidian Surfer, the Fallen Surfer. The only Walgreens exclusive I was able to get a hold of this past year. Not sure what's going on with that, but I hope it straightens out before Baron Zemo comes out, because I actually want him. That said, that was a really nice release, and something I forgot came out in 2021, along with Firestar. Another fan channel exclusive, a character we've needed for the longest time. It's just a shame she came out before Pinless Tech was a thing. Otherwise, I might have squeezed her on the list. But, that said, another thing I'm not going to be including on my list is anything outside of the comics, so no Gamerverse or MCU figures will be on my list. I just don't think it's a fair comparison because those figures seem to get a little bit more budget than the comics stuff goes as far as paint and sculpt goes. So, I love the Gamerverse Miles. I adore the Zombie Cap, and it pained me very much so not to include the Infinity Saga Surtur on my list, but they are not comic book based figures, so they were not allowed to be on the list. But don't get it twisted. If this was a top 13, like my top 13 action figures video, I think I misspoke earlier, I said top 10. It was a top 13 because I just couldn't pick. If it was one of those situations, I probably would have made an exception and put them on here. Well, let's be honest. But other than those, the, what is it, Far From Home, No Way Home, No Way Home, that's what it is. Doctor Strange, really love that figure too, as well as the Infinity Saga Ironmonger and the What If series Hydra Stomper. I saw those at GameStop over a week ago, and those are chunks of plastic. And you guys know me, I like chunky figures, but alas, they're not eligible because A, I don't have them, and B, they're not comic based. So, getting into the honorable mentions I have on screen here. Of course, we already talked about Ursa Major, but the main reason he didn't make the list is because his articulation is a bit loose in places and clunky, so that's not ideal. That and the figure that edged him out doesn't have those problems. So, as much as I love having a giant monster werebear man, he just wasn't strong enough to make the list. But if I was going to include two Build-A-Figures, he probably would have edged somebody out, if I'm being quite honest, because he's still really freaking cool looking, and the potential for reuse here is really, really high. I mean, I know a lot of people want a Grizzly. That's something, right? But also, talking about the Armadillo Build-A-Figure, which is another really solid baff. I don't have him finished yet, so he was not eligible for that reason, but I could totally see us getting a new Abomination or A-Bomb on that buck, so here's hoping we see that at some point. Getting into the figures sitting in front of him here, we have Psycho Man, Ecstasy, got Psycho Man, and the Evolutionary from the Fantastic Four Retro Wave. Hoping we get another Retro Wave in 2022. Not sure if it's going to be Spider-Man. Actually, we are getting a Spider-Man one, but that was, I think, supposed to come out in 2021. Just got delayed a bit. Maybe an Iron Man wave. I don't know, but I love the Retro Wave stuff. That's my jam. I love the old Toy Biz stuff, even though it is really, really dated. As far as sculpted paint goes, it's very naive compared to nowadays, but I just love the card backs. They just pop, man. But these two, while they are really strong releases, and they're both pinless, which, keep in mind, that's going to get figures bonus points on this list. There's not a whole lot of figures on my list with pins. I think there's only 3 that have pins. Everything else is pinless, so pinless tech is the way of the future. It's something your boy really likes, because the quality is just bar none compared to the pins. So, while pinless may not be a big deal to some folks, it is to me because it helps the sons of bitches stand. Okay? They're not all floppy and gummy and go after a while with the pinless tech. So, I truly appreciate that. Thank you, Hasbro Marvel team. And you know what? I'm going to give a shout out to Talker Art, who's been the most vocal about figures being pinless, I gotta give cred where it's due, man. He's been tooting that horn for years now, so, you know, to each their own, but I gotta give props where it's due. But as far as these two go, they're two characters we didn't have. They're pinless, and they both got their own unique sculpts, so really fun figures, but I just have no attachment to these characters, so that's why they did not crack my top 10 list. That's another factor. If I don't have a lot of attachment to the character, they're not going to make the list. Speaking of which, Ironheart! A really strong release from the Ursa Major Build-A-Figure wave, but I don't give a crap about Riri Williams. I don't know who she is other than she's taken over for Iron Man in the comics now. That, and while this is a really nice release, and it's nice to see females getting some double jointed elbows and pinless tech to kind of strengthen their joints up quite a bit, I might add. And while this figure probably comes with one of the best unhelmeted, unmasked, whatever you want to call it, head sculpts in the Marvel Legends line to date, I just have no attachment to this character, and I would have preferred if the red had that nice candy apple red look to it, like the Shang-Chi wave Iron Man, Tony Stark AI to be exact, which is another honorable mention. I don't have him here, but I do have a figure on that buck. I have the Stealth Armor Iron Man, which pains me not to put this guy on the list because it is probably my favorite look for Iron Man. I love the dark metallic blue and the red. They just pop. The contrast is so vivid and vibrant. It looks awesome. But gosh darn it, he doesn't have the shoulder pauldrons and the helmet to go with this color scheme. I would have liked a new head sculpt, and you know, they could have just reused the Silver Centurion shoulders. I don't know why they didn't, but it's a shame that they didn't, because that would have just set this guy off. That, and I guess this guy kind of disintegrates. I didn't have that problem, knock on wood, but it is a problem, so I'm going to deduct points for that, because your figure shouldn't fall to pieces when you take them out of the package, no matter how gnarly you are doing it, which, your boy here, not the most patient guy in the world. I take figures out the package kind of aggressively. So, with that said, moving on to our final honorable mention that we have sitting here, we have Shriek. I know she's not the best figure, ever. Okay, I get it. It's not the most accurate either. She doesn't have the right head sculpt for this look for Shriek, and I would have preferred if the details were sculpted on as opposed to just paint, but gosh darn it, if we aren't getting out of the rut of having shit female bodies that can't stand worth a damn. I absolutely adore the buck this thing has. It gives me hopes that we'll see a lot of really sturdy female figures in the Marvel Legends line in the near to distant future. I believe Siren in the upcoming X-Men wave utilizes this buck, and while she doesn't have a lot of unique parts going on, which does bum me out a little bit, I would like to see some more unique sculpts here and there, considering we seem to get that with the MCU a lot. It is nice to finally have a female buck that is just not going to fall over quite as easily. It'll still fall over because it's a petite figure still. But damn it if it ain't rock solid in the knees. I absolutely love that. So, with that being said, honorable mentions out the way. Let's kick things off with number 10 spot. Kicking things off at the number 10 spot is going to be none other than Lady Deathstrike, part of the Zemnu Build-A-Figure wave, the first supervillains wave we've gotten from Hasbro in the Marvel Legends line. That's all villains front to back. This was a really solid release from that wave. There are a couple other figures from that wave on this list, but this one ranks the lowest because, well, you didn't get anything else in the box for this character. You only got the Build-A-Figure piece, and while I don't believe that the claws on this figure are too short like some people are saying, I think the size is okay. It would have been nice to get some extra hands. Another open hand for the right side and another more closed hand for the left side would have been nice, along with a screaming head sculpt or a more aggressive looking head sculpt. Would have spruced this figure up a bit. I can let the paint thing slide because this is a first time buck body, whatever you want to call it. It's the first time they've ever used this body, the first time they've ever put out this body, so of course the paint is going to take a hit, but I will say some shading would go a long ways. At the number 9 spot is a figure we've all been waiting for, and of course I'm talking about a decent Iceman in the Marvel Legends line. That is right, we are talking about the Age of Apocalypse Iceman from the Colossus Build-A-Figure wave, a wave I recently reviewed on this channel. Managed to crack the top 10 in a few places, actually. So there you go. And if there's one thing this guy did right that Lady Deathstrike did wrong, is he actually came with accessories for the figure you're buying, not just the Build-A-Figure piece, which, granted, they're not my mind's eye view of Iceman accessories, as cool as translucent blue Carnage hands are. I think Iceman deserves his own unique batch of accessories. That's just not going to happen right now. I think we ought to hold out for a deluxe Riders release of Iceman where he's got his ice sled and some cool looking ice blast effects. I think that will be the quintessential Iceman for the 616 collection, but until then, this one's not too shabby. At the number 8 spot is a figure on the exact opposite end of the spectrum to Lady Deathstrike, and of course we're talking about none other than the Age of Apocalypse Sabretooth from the Colossus Build-A-Figure wave. That is right, this guy is a hunk of burning plastic, and even though he takes up a majority of the package space, the real estate within the box itself, you get an extra head sculpt, an extra set of hands, and you still get a Build-A-Figure part for the Colossus Build-A-Figure. Granted, it's the smallest one, but it still counts. And special shout out to Mr. Xmanny87. In his top 10 video, he points out that Sabretooth is not supposed to have claws in this iteration because he is powered down. So please go check him out for some really accurate info on old school Marvel Comics. He knows what he's talking about. But that aside, they could have easily made this guy a deluxe release and packaged him with the chain that came with Wild Child instead of packing that chain with Wild Child, obviously, and possibly something else, but they didn't. They packaged him in the standard size Legends box and said, here you go. And for that reason, and that reason alone, I gotta give Hasbro props here, because you are getting quite the value for money, the bang for your buck, as I like to call it. At the number 7 spot is the lone Build-A-Figure I said I'd be putting on this list, and that is of course going to be none other than the Age of Apocalypse Colossus, just edging out the Ursa Major Build-A-Figure with slightly less clunky articulation. That'll get you far in life, folks. Less clunky articulation is what your boy likes, and this guy has it, and has a little bit more than what Ursa Major had to offer, on top of the fact that he appears to be pinless, which you guys know your boy's also a fan of. But while this may not be a traditional look for Colossus, and one I'm not too familiar with, it is something different, and it does look cool, and it gives people hopes for a potential Outback Colossus, which I could totally see them reusing some of the parts off this guy for. So for those reasons alone, I think he deserves a spot on this list. That, and it never hurts to change things up once in a while. Something new and different isn't always a bad thing. At the number 6 spot is the lone deluxe figure I decided to throw on this list, and that is of course going to be none other than the Mad Titan himself, Thanos, as he appears in the Infinity Gauntlet story arc. This is of course the most iconic look for Thanos, and something the Marvel Legends line has needed for what seems like the longest time now. Something I'm surprised Toy Biz never took a stab at, even though we got a lot of Thanos figures in the 90s toy lines like Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, etc. But that said, Hasbro delivered what I think is the quintessential Thanos for anyone's 616 Marvel Legends collection. I myself have been using both the Walmart exclusive kind of repaint of the modern Thanos, as well as the old Marvel Select Thanos, which are both really solid, but they're not this guy. On top of the fact that he is once again pinless in the knees, which will give you bonus points in this house anyways. I just like the build of this guy a little bit better. He's a little bit hindered, yes, and he could have used a more neutral head sculpt and Mistress Death to go alongside him, as well as a throne. That said, I think we'll probably be seeing those at some point in the future, since we are getting the Portal with that new Doctor Strange Target exclusive figure. I think more Dio pieces are coming down the pipeline in the near to distant future at some point in time. So that gives us something to look forward to, but at the end of the day, we finally got a classic, more traditional style Thanos for our Legends collections. At the number 5 spot is arguably the best figure on this list, objectively, and of course I am talking about none other than Johann Schmidt Zed Skal from the Zemnu Build-A-Figure wave. This guy's got it all going on. He's got an alternate head sculpt, a cool looking gun, the Cosmic Cube, and 3 sets of hands that all make sense for the character. I don't know what else this guy could have come with other than maybe a flamethrower or something crazy like that. I believe there is a Mezco version in this same kind of getup where he has a flamethrower, but I would say for the price of admission, you are getting plenty in the box, along with a Build-A-Figure part that's not too shabby for what used to be $20 price tag. But with that being said, let us move on to the Big Four. Kicking off the Big Four is arguably my favorite Iron Man figure that I have gotten to date in my collection, Marvel Legends or otherwise. Of course, we are talking about the Modular Armor Iron Man from the Ursa Major Build-A-Figure wave. Shy of being more in the Marvel vs. Capcom / 90s animated series colors and coming with a big old honkin' proton cannon, I have no complaints with this figure. Maybe a Tony Stark head, but fingers crossed we'll get a really nice one from Paul Harding later down the line on a Iron Man retro card. Who's up for that? I know I am. I'm jonesing for a classic Crimson Dynamo and Mandarin on that card as well, but getting back to Iron Man here, this thing is dang near flawless. I don't mind the colors on this figure. I would just prefer the more matte kind of ketchup and mustard look, but that's just me. At the end of the day though, I think this is single-handedly one of the best Iron Man figures Hasbro has ever produced, next to the 80th anniversary Iron Man, which has been my favorite Iron Man up until this year. At the number 3 spot is probably going to be a very controversial pick for those of you watching this video, but gosh darn it, I couldn't help myself but put this guy super high on my list. And of course, we're talking about none other than the Dread Dormammu from the Zemnu Build-A-Figure wave. And yes, I know the head colors are totally whack. His size is a bit on the small side, and for some of you, had a little trouble with the boots coming off. I didn't have that problem personally, but it is a problem worth noting, so I'm noting it. That said though, I still really like this figure. I think he is super cool. I always have been a fan of Dormammu, one of my favorite Marvel supervillains. I'm also a big Doctor Strange fan, so I am excited for that new classic Doctor Strange that's coming out. Not too crazy about the fact that it's a Walmart exclusive, but fingers crossed your boy finds one. But at the end of the day, we got a classic Dormammu, and that's really all your boy wanted. He's happy with it, other than maybe the crown falling off, but I guess some super glue will fix that right up. And let that good old controversy continue, because coming in at the number 2 spot is the lone exclusive I said I'd be putting on this list, and that is going to be none other than the Hasbro PulseCon 2021 exclusive Spider-Man, the animated series Venom, who was a part of the Spider-Man retro card series as well. This guy, I'm just happy it exists. I'm happy Hasbro finally took a hint after all the bitching, pissing, and moaning over all the Venoms we got on that piece of crap Hyperion body. We finally got one that is on the Omega Red body. I don't care if it's a reused body. I'm just glad it ain't a reuse of that hunk of shit. So, with that being said, no, this is not a perfect figure. He's got the ports on his shoulders. He doesn't have the white squares on the backs of his hands. And the knees are a little bit gummy, but that's more or less a personal thing. That might not be on all of them. It could just be mine. But that said, it is the animated style Venom. I love the animated style Venom. It is the Venom I grew up with as a kid, the one I have the most nostalgic feels for. I can't put this guy any lower on the list. If I did, I would hate myself forever, and that's no fun, right? That, and I have high hopes that in 2022, the 60th anniversary of our friendly neighborhood webhead Spider-Man himself, we're going to see a re-release of this guy with more traditional comic book look, and quite possibly some hands that'll work on this guy with the white squares on the back. What do you guys think? But with that being said, it is time now that we wrap things up with the number one spot. Who's it gonna be? And my number one favorite Marvel Legends figure of 2021 is gonna be none other than the man, the myth, the psychotic robot, hell-bent on world domination himself, Ultron, from the Ursa Major Build-A-Figure wave. This figure is damn near perfect, and I say that with the highest regards. This figure is just about flawless, and I say just about because he is missing an open hand for the right side. It would have been nice to have that option as well, but as it stands, he comes with two fists, he comes with the one open hand, and the iconic Kirby crackle that you can slip into his mouth or into his hand, whichever you prefer, to give him a more Jack Kirby inspired look. I absolutely love this figure. It's 100% pinless. It's got some really nice silver paint apps on it, and for the love of all that is holy, it actually looks like Ultron and not a deranged robot Easter Bunny. So, sorry Toy Biz, I love ya, but what the hell are you doing? But at the end of the day, Hasbro finally delivered a super retro, classic, traditional style Ultron to us in the Marvel Legends line almost 20 years after its conception, and I have to say it was well worth the wait. Thus, he takes the number one spot as my favorite Marvel Legends figure of 2021. What were your guys' top 10 Marvel Legends figures of 2021? Let me know in the comments down below, and feel free to include MCU stuff. I didn't do that personally, but you are free to do so if you so choose. So with that being said, this is the final top 10 video I will be doing for 2021. I am planning, however, to do a top 10 Transformers Kingdom figures and top 10 Masters of the Universe Revelation figures at some point in the near to distant future, so stay tuned for that. I got requested to do the top 10 Masterverse figures by a commenter on my top 10 favorite action figures of the year video, so since they asked nicely, I'm very much happy to oblige. But that being said, we're going to be going back to our normal, well, the new normal upload schedule very soon here. February's right around the corner, and that's about when I said I was going to start doing that in the Mythic Legions top 10 videos. So stay tuned. Got some changes coming to the channel, changes I'm hoping you guys will like and enjoy. But as always, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and if you are so inclined, please hit that notification bell so you know whenever I upload more content to the channel, because we gotta show that algorithm who's boss, right? We are almost at 400 subs, so I have to thank you guys very much from the bottom of my heart. That is awesome how many subs we have gained over this purge of top 10 videos. You guys seem to like these, so if there's anything else you'd like me to do, please let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to try and pull it off if I have the means to do so. But if you haven't already, hit me up on Instagram at Overlord Productions. But as always, keep them comments civil, because the world sucks enough as it is. And until next time, I'll catch you guys later.